David makes the statement in the Psalms, the chariots of God are 20,000, even thousand. In other words, he implies there's a host of these things. And so perhaps as we look at modern pictures of the airships, UFOs, starships, whatever you want to call it, your description, your term is not wrong. These clouds of glory may be something totally different than what we once believed. I was having a discussion with a friend of mine who was quite resistant to my way of thinking, and I asked him, I said, do you really think this is cumulonimbus cloud? I mean, it's going to be a little hard for, body density to be supported by an actual cloud. No, I think the cloud was just a descriptive term of what the airships looked like. Barry Downing, there were others, I think Morris Jessup wrote about the Bible and UFOs, and other books were written, but in my time frame, Barry Downing, a Presbyterian minister in Pennsylvania, was willing to discuss the idea that many biblical events were related to UFOs. Very bold of him to do that, very mature of his congregation to allow him to do that. Why should that be a problem in any honest, seeking church community? To raise that question, to discuss that. I remember once as a pastor, someone asked me about their confusion over the biblical Jehovah. And they said, Steve, I see a real contradiction between the teachings of the New Testament and the teachings of Jesus and the behavior of this Jehovah figure in the Old Testament. The command for genocide, the cruelty to his own people. If you don't behave in a certain way, I'm just going to kill you. Well, that's a little psychopathic. Little hard to point at that and tell your children, well, that's the model for behavior because it's in the Bible. I think we, as thinking humans, should stop being afraid of our own questions. And we should have honest discussion. And as I said, it is the truth that makes us, upsets us, sets us free. And it's the exploring of that truth. Are we more about lies, dishonesty, falsehood, deception, cover-ups? I don't like being lied to. I want to be able to ask questions and know the truth and come to a clearer understanding of things as they actually were. This photo was on the book, I believe, of Robert Temple's Alien Identities, an excellent book that explores a lot of ancient references to the UFO reality, the Vedic texts of India that go into great detail about what they call the Vimanas. Incredibly detailed description of these flying machines. Are we to pretend this was just all made up, just a great little science fiction novel that somebody back then was writing about? I don't think so. And I'm like Charles Fort. I don't have time for the absurdities of some of the attempts to try to make all this go away. It's not going away, friend. And in fact, it's in your face. So you may as well deal with it. You may as well come to some honest questions and stop being so manipulated by the culture you live in and the blinders that they have on. Ezekiel describes an object that was the color of a beryl, a wheel in a wheel, and its rings were full of eyes. In the photographs that I saw as a young man, there were portal-like openings around the the craft. I'm not sure that's windows for them to peep through as much as perhaps a part of the propulsion system. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I just know what I saw, and Ezekiel, he didn't know either. But he said there's a wheel in a wheel. I've seen so many artists try to depict this way. I don't think that that's necessarily what Ezekiel saw. He saw a wheel in a wheel, and the rings were awesome and full of eyes. So I'm sure he saw many lights, things that many UFO witnesses describe today. He saw it then. People are seeing it now. And many cases in the past, in recent history, and we'll get into this later, people mistake this, well, this has to be God. It's too fantastic and fabulous. And yet we know from stories of our culture interacting with more primitive cultures, people are in such awe that they want to tag deity onto anything that's in advance or more impressive than their level of development. And that is a critical error. That gets you into a lot of trouble. And humans, we always get in trouble when we try to find God outside of our own heart and our own selves. It makes us vulnerable and easy prey for manipulation. Like a tumbling house of cards, once certain long-held views are found incomplete, all other ideas are subject to scrutiny. So, once you begin to dismantle some of your ideas and beliefs, a lot of things fall apart. The closet gets cleaned out. Hey, that's okay. That is okay. You will survive. Trust me. You're listening to a guy who was so rigid and knew the answers and just had the definition for the way it all was, and now that's all in disarray. And I am so happy because now I'm free to explore and to listen and to learn and to see more clearly the picture of possibly what is going on. You can imagine, as a young minister, I was very concerned about the ridicule and consequences the UFO debate could create. And I opted to remain silent on the UFO subject for many years. I had bills to pay. I had a family to raise. In the photograph here, that is my son Scott. And I didn't really want to see my family destitute, so I kept a lid on things. But of course I was reading and pondering, and yet it's comical to me that I was a charismatic minister at the time, and I would lay in the floor and speak in tongues, but I wouldn't talk about UFOs. Now, that is bizarre, isn't it? That I was okay with being ridiculed in one area, but in the UFO area, hey, that's just too weird. I don't know. There's a stigma that this insane collective attaches to someone who looks up in the sky and they see something and they say, "Good grief, that's not an airplane." And I think it's time we come out of the dark ages, folks. Hello, and we recognize that. Yes, we're not alone, dear friend. We have not been alone for a long time. And I advise you to get it because the train's rolling, all right? Dysfunctional consciousness is like family dysfunction. It ignores the big white elephant standing in the living room. And I think this is a good comparison, and we've all had to deal with family issues. And we wanted to throw a rug over that big elephant, and everybody saw, well, gee, this family has this problem and that problem.